Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here. My name is Dallas Kephart, and I represent the 73rd Legislative District in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, serving parts of Cambria and Clearfield County. And I also have the privilege of serving as the Deputy Policy Chair for the Policy Committee, and today serving as the chair of this hearing. I want to begin by thanking the Penn Northwest Development Corporation for hosting us today. And I'd like to invite the members with us today to introduce themselves, starting with our host, Representative Park Wetling.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Really looking forward to all the testifiers. Thank you very much to Jake and Rod, Penn Northwest, and your whole team for setting this up for us today, working with Nancy from the Policy Committee. I'm Park Wetling. I represent parts of Mercer County with Tim Bonner here, and then I formerly represented parts of Erie, Crawford, a big part of Mercer, and also Lawrence. So really looking forward again to the testimony today. I do want to acknowledge a couple different individuals that are here this morning with us. We have two of our Mercer County Commissioners, Bill Finley and Ann Coleman are here, and we also have Sheila Sterrett from our U.S. Senators, Dave McCormick. So Sheila Sterrett's here too. So thank you very much.
Go ahead, Robert.
Thank you, Deputy Chair Kephart, and to the testifiers, thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is State Representative Robert Ledbetter. I have the honor of representing the 109th District, which consists of all of beautiful Columbia County. It is also a very rural legislative district. Agriculture is the #1 industry for my legislative district, and so I think it is timely and exciting to have a panel compiled with experts such as you all that will speak to what we are doing to strengthen rural Pennsylvania. So excited for this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Kephart. It's a pleasure to serve with you. Enjoy our company down there. Thank you guys for being here. It's my pleasure to be down here. I'm Representative Jake Banham from the 4th Legislative District, which is the bottom side of Erie County. My pleasure to be here.
Thank you, and I believe we'll be joined by Representative Marla Brown here in a little bit whenever she gets a chance to get here, and we may be joined by others online here. But we're going to proceed today, and members, if you have any questions, just send me a text and we'll get you on the list here. But so today's hearing focuses on a simple but critical question. How do we make rural Pennsylvania places where people want to live, work, and build a future? Across rural Pennsylvania, we're seeing both challenges and potential. Employers are ready to grow, but they're competing not just with other states, but sometimes with other regions within our own Commonwealth. Families want to stay, but housing options are limited or out of reach. And communities are working hard to invest in the quality of life, from parks to transit to recreation, because they know that's what keeps people and attracts new ones. So today we're taking a comprehensive look at what it takes to make rural communities competitive again. Growing businesses, expanding housing opportunities, and strengthening community infrastructure. If you don't have housing, you can't grow a workforce. If you don't have infrastructure, you can't attract investment. And if you don't have opportunity, you lose people. And it's far too long as a person from the central and western part of Pennsylvania, I see this firsthand in my district as well. And, you know, I always joke that it's not a good way that our greatest exports are people who look like me and younger. So, you know, we got to be able to keep them here, and that's what today's hearing is going to focus on as well. So I'm going to introduce our testifiers on the first panel here today. And so testifying today, we've organized today's discussion in 3 panels that will reflect the building blocks of strong rural communities. First, we'll hear from leaders focused on business development and the competitive landscape within Pennsylvania. And then following that, we'll hear from experts in the housing and repopulation areas and what it takes to bring people back and keep them here. And finally, we'll examine quality of life, including parks, recreation, and transit, and how those investments shape community altogether. So we're going to begin with panel 1 here, and we have Rod Wilt from the Penn Northwest Development Corporation, also a former member of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. And then we have David George from Joy Cone, and Chris McGill. He is here as well from Vista Site Selection, and we thank you for coming in from Ohio. And even he was informing me earlier that he's an Ohio State fan, and we're sorry about that inconvenience. As someone that lives a half hour from State College, you know what side I come down on. So anyhow, but we're very happy to have you here, and thank you for coming. And we're going to start with Mr. Will.
Thank you, Representative Gephardt. I really appreciate you and members of the House Republican Policy Committee for being in Mercer County today. We're honored by your presence, and I want to thank you, Park. Long history with you, Mercer County resident, Greenville, PA, like I am. So thank you very much for bringing your committee here. I'm the Executive Director of Penn Northwest Development Corporation. We are Mercer County's lead economic development agency, and we're also a Certified Economic Development Organization, or a CEDO, as designated by the PA Department of Community and Economic Development. Over the 40-year history of our existence, we've been dedicating to rebuilding our county into the economic powerhouse that it once was. As part of your packet, the orange packet in front of you, we've given you a copy of our program of work. It is a living, breathing document that is updated annually. And this document is clearly aligned with our regional economic development partner, the Northwest Commission, and the comprehensive economic development strategy that is required of them by federal agencies. And also, it's linked directly to the 10-year strategic plan for economic development in Pennsylvania as presented by Governor Shapiro and Secretary Siger. Our team here at Penn Northwest, seated behind me, I can tell you that we take our work very seriously, and we take our responsibility as community leaders very seriously. We know that for this period of time that we collectively have the power to systematically change the reality of Mercer County. And we're solely focused on building a bright and prosperous future for ourselves and our children. So during today's hearing, you're going to hear from many of our local business leaders who are waging the good fight against many economic headwinds, but they're truly creating a successful opportunity for our residents. They are the ones that are keeping people here with great jobs and great opportunities. We're blessed by their steady and continuous investment. Many are multi-generational companies that have made a long-term commitment to making it in Mercer County, which is one of our taglines for manufacturing. So today I want to talk about something that directly impacts our jobs, our communities, and our future, and that is Pennsylvania's ability to compete economically, especially against our neighbor to the west, Ohio. Ohio seems to be getting a lot of economic attention these days, and it's not by accident. Now, at first glance, if you're a fan of AI and ChatGPT and others, you can do a quick search and look at where Pennsylvania compares to our neighbor to the west. And you'll see in many categories that Pennsylvania is really holding their own. We have one of the largest economies in the country, approaching $1 trillion. We're diverse with strengths in healthcare, education, manufacturing, agriculture, finance. On paper, we really should be leading. But if you look just a little closer, you'll see that many of those statistics are skewed to the east and southeastern corner of Pennsylvania. So what are we doing across rural PA, where most of you are from and where you're sitting today? Well, our region, as Representative Barton knows as well from up in Erie County, we're situated here between Pittsburgh and Erie, and we have incredible assets here as well. We've got world-class colleges here. We are linked to the state system through Slippery Rock, just to our south. We've got great private liberal arts colleges here, both in Mercer County with Teal and Grove City, and just to the south, Westminster. We have a proud agricultural history here. And industry has always led us, and so has the railroad industry. But yet, many communities around us, and we literally are sitting within a mile, 2 miles from Ohio, we're struggling with workforce recruitment and population decline. So over in eastern Ohio, we're seeing a much different trajectory. And we work very closely with our economic development partners over in what we would call the Mahoning Valley. You're in the Shenango Valley here today. And they are now benefiting from new investments, particularly in manufacturing and energy, and they have taken a lead in the AI revolution that is really getting developed full force. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to attend down in Pittsburgh at the Carpenters Union a legislative reception with many of the companies that are leading the AI revolution in Pennsylvania. The tens of billions of dollars in jobs or in investment and the thousands of jobs that are coming to this region are exciting, and it's a great opportunity, but that's not the topic for today. Ohio decided about 10 years ago that they were going to compete heavily nationally in the business recruitment and retention game. And in fact, they have fast become one of the most business-friendly states in the country. They have put regulatory reform on steroids. And the impact of those decisions is visible right along our border. We compete directly with them in the areas of site selection. You'll hear about that. We compete directly with them in site development, infrastructure funding, workforce development, and where we really get our brains beat in by Ohio is just by the sheer number of economic development professionals they have. I've heard this statistic that for every one person we have working in economic development in Pennsylvania, Ohio has 5. And that's because they have figured out at the state level how to support economic development organizations like ours at the local level. Now, that's a debate that has been raging for decades in the legislature. But if we're going to compete, we've got to make sure that we have the boots on the ground in every of our 67 counties to put forth a very dynamic economic development strategy in each of these counties. So how do we do this? As you mentioned in your opening comments, Representative Gephardt, housing is a big issue. No long-term professional in the economic development game would have ever thought that in the year 2026, that one of the highest priorities of an economic development organization would be housing development. But in order to compete, we need to have places for people to live. And counties like ours, like many of the counties where you're from, have not seen significant housing starts in decades. We need to figure out how to make programs that are available to the manufacturing, industrial, and commercial sector of the economy, make those programs available to housing developers. Now, they don't need to mirror them exactly because we have issues with prevailing wage and others that need to be tweaked, but we need to look at the existing programs we have and see if they can be molded into the housing sector. I was personally happy that some of the previous testimony that me and other members of our organization have given across the state actually found their way into the governor's housing plan that was just put out last month, where they are looking at creative ways and asking the legislature to look at creative ways to use the RACP program as one example for housing. So as you alluded to in your opening comments, Pennsylvania has every advantage, and especially Western Pennsylvania, we have every advantage that we need to succeed. We have a tremendous highway infrastructure here, the intersection of I-79 and I-80, I-90 to the north, I-76 to the south, and where you're sitting right now, we only have a 1-hour commute to the beautiful new Pittsburgh International Airport via Route 376. The Marcellus and Utica shale play continues to produce tremendous energy, and we've got a highly skilled workforce, but we just need more housing and opportunities to keep that workforce here. When you look at areas like ours, we are forced to think regionally, and unfortunately for us, our region includes the Mahoning Valley in Ohio. So this is not about copying Ohio, it's about recognizing the reality that we're in direct competition with them, that they've got more people and they have more money to attract business and retain business in Ohio. And we've got to do that here in our area. Now, I will tell you that in my 5.5 years here at Penn Northwest, that over 80% of the jobs that have been created have been by the companies you're going to hear from today. That's been organic growth. These companies are adding that 50 to 100, 200,000 square feet. They're adding those jobs. So although we may not have a huge announcement about a big company coming to our area, which we think we might later in the year, bringing hundreds of jobs, it's our small to mid-sized companies that are really leading the way. So in closing, I'll just say, the choice is ours, and I know that You know, the governor has asked the legislature to bring us a timely budget this year. I know it may be difficult. There are some things in that budget that will help us. And I encourage you, as you go through your deliberations, that you remember that, you know, economic development across the northern tier of Pennsylvania and areas like ours really need some help. We can compete with Ohio, and we have been directly, but for us to really build a sustainable economy here, we need to grow our housing infrastructure, and I'd like you to look at ways to help us do that. So thank you for allowing us to speak today. We're thrilled that you're going to take a little tour of some of our community assets while you're here. And for those of you who have traveled some distance, both members and staff, we really appreciate you driving through the tornado last night to be here. So with that, I'll pass the microphone to David George, and he and his family are just one of the treasures of Mercer County. And David runs a huge operation across many states across the country, and he has a lot of other areas of the country that are doing some things that he thinks could be helpful here in Pennsylvania. So, David.
Thank you, Rod. Thank you, Representative Gethart and the Policy Committee to inviting me to come here and speak with you. Appreciate this opportunity. I'm David George, President Joy Baking Group, or you may know us as Joy Cone Company. We're headquartered here in Hermitage, PA. I'm third generation, so we've been here for a few years in the area. We make ice cream cones first and foremost, but we also make wafers for ice cream sandwiches and cookie inclusions to go into ice cream and dessert crumb. And we're also now spinning graham crust pies, pie crust. So we've begun to diversify, and with that, we've expanded our footprint here in the valley. We just completed about a 220,000 square foot expansion to our cookie plant, and of course putting equipment in there now as well. So, you know, investing in the business has been our focus, you know, year after year, and we're going to continue to do that. And we've been fortunate, frankly, so very grateful for that. I just want to touch on some of the things that we run into, and then there are going to be some familiar themes that you've heard about. One is job skills, and you know, finding people that in the trades, welding, electricians, electromechanicals. And I just recently in Farrell High School, I think Representative Wendling had a part in it, where they got a grant to work with children, high schoolers, to focus on the trades. I think that's fantastic, and that's what's badly needed, and it needs to be expanded. I think it's great for that school district. It'd be great to see that those efforts expanded. So I congratulate Rep. Wendling on working on that. Another area is housing, which Roy just touched on quite a bit. So Rod's your brother Roy sometimes. Rod just touched on, so I don't want to beat that too much. But that used to be a selling experience when we were recruiting people to move into this area. Housing is inexpensive. It's plentiful, and that's no longer the case, especially for the starter homes and condos. I mean, to me, that is the real critical focus when you talk about housing. It used to be you could buy a house for $150,000. Well, those are gone. And, you know, those starter homes for people just starting out really need to be the focus, I think, or condos where people can afford. Because if they can't, they're moving away. And all you gentlemen have already touched on that point. Another area is job training funds. And we've been fortunate. The OJT and the WEDNET PA we have pursued, and it's been helpful. You know, when we bring somebody in, we hire them, even for the entry-level position, there's a lot of training. It's a skilled position right from the start, so there's big costs in getting them ready and being able to be productive. We're doing that. I would say that needs to be expanded to the extent it can be. It needs to be advertised more. I don't know that a lot of businesses know about it, but it is critical to covering our costs. Lastly, the biggest thing is probably for us is energy, and I'm sure you've heard issues about that. We are butting up against our capacity for power. I just mentioned we did a 200,000 plus square foot expansion. We're going to be expanding our cone, that was for our cookie plant. This year, we'll be expanding our cone plant. We need to upgrade it. It's an older building. And after that expansion, we're about tapped out for all the power that we can get. We've been told that we now have to put in our own power station. Costing on that is about $8 million plus. It's a couple of years to do. There's a long wait list for that. And that is just a huge, huge hurdle. We have plants in Flagstaff, Arizona, and Lamar's, Iowa. In Lamar's, Iowa, for Flagstaff, we have no power issues. Lamar's, Iowa, when we've needed more power, the city and the state brought it in. There was no pointing to our company saying, you need to put it in, or you need to invest on the power. They brought it to us because we need it. And we just want to buy more power. We want to keep building. We want to pay more for the energy that we use, but to sink in $8+ million just to have power to use is a huge hurdle. And we are also, we're 100% ESOP S Corp. So our employees own the company. Everybody who works at Joy is an owner in the company. As an S Corp ESOP, we do not pay income taxes. Now, we have a big obligation because we give shares to our employees, and then we have to buy them those shares back when they leave. So there's a cost there, but you're not going to hear me crying about taxes, but you will hear me. Energy is the key, and it to me is one thing you have to look at when you compare the competitiveness of Pennsylvania to Ohio or Iowa or elsewhere. We need to be able to have reasonable access to power. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, David, and thanks, Rod, for your comments. And thank you, House Republican Policy Committee, for having me. We got off to a rocky start. I'm an Ohio State football fan. I'm sorry about that. But my sister has a degree from Penn State. And my wife's side of the family, they're all Pittsburgh sports fans, and I'm a Cincinnati sports fan, which creates challenges for our 5-year-old son. But I will make it up to you with some insights today. Today's testimony is meant to provide insights from my experience as really 3 things: a site selection consultant, I'm an economist, and I used to be at the state's Economic Development Department, the Ohio Department of Development, as it was transitioning to Jobs Ohio, and I played a pretty big role in that transition. The things that I want to share are my vantage point from the corporate, from really the corporation's point of view as it relates to site selection competitiveness. I have a slide deck that's in your materials. I'm going to talk through this, so it might be helpful if you want to follow along in this deck. I'm on page 2, the testimony piece. But what I want to make sure that I convey is really what we've witnessed as we've worked on some very, very nationally visible large site selection deals, and also provide some insights. It's not lost on me, and it's a nice segue from Rod's comments about Ohio, that I've got a lot of experience in Ohio and Indiana and some of the surrounding competing Midwestern states. So I'll try to shed some light on that. Let me talk a little bit about my company and who I am a little more specifically. Vista Site Selection, we're a 4-year-old tech site selection consulting firm. We all have experienced site selection consultants that have come from JLL, Lockheed Martin, data scientists. 40% of our employees are data scientists, GIS professionals, and analysts. So we do a heavy dose of data analytics. We know that's not the whole story. We know that's more decision support. but in this day and age, it's critical. It's a critical part of the process. We've worked with businesses in all industries, so that includes industrial, retail, you name it. Our data helps all. Our advisory helps all. In addition to being an economist, I mentioned I was the executive director of the Ohio Tax Credit Authority. So my role at the state was to approve all of their grant and tax credit programs at the state when businesses would come in. And then my last role before I went into the private sector was I co-designed the state's ROI calculator. So when Governor Kasich at the time, who formed Jobs Ohio, would get in front of the podium and say this project's ROI positive, he wasn't talking about a blood type. He was talking about more tax revenue coming in than incentives going out. So I'm going to cover really 3 things that I think are really the most important steps in competing for businesses. And I'll say business attraction. I'm separating this a little bit from growing existing businesses, but you'll see some synergies between the two. First, dress like the industry you want to be. Second, simulate your market against others. And third, organize community assets. And I'm going to delve into each of these 3 points. So let's start with dress like the industry you want to be. One of my biggest gripes with economic developers is they list targeted industries, but they're technically listing sectors. So advanced manufacturing is not an industry, it's a sector. Manufacturing is not an industry, it's a sector. The problem with that is there's significant variability in what I would call core location drivers within sectors. In my slide deck here, I compare food processing to defense manufacturing. If you look at the NAICS code, they are in the same sector, but they are vastly different operations. And the way you block and tackle to get those industries is also vastly different. When we think about those core drivers, we look at the primary objective. So why the company is expanding. Are they trying to optimize logistics costs and deliver faster based on a product that's become very successful? Or in the defense manufacturer, are they trying to secure production, secure being the key word, and transportation of an asset they're developing for the federal government? In all these cases, demand, the market orientation, they're different. So one of the things that we always advise communities to do is to think like the industry they want to attract. And I can pause if we have an entry. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and segue into the next item, which is industry site drivers. Again, when we're thinking about the difference, and this is why it's important to understand the industries you want, supply chain logistics, infrastructure and utilities, and land use availability and demand all vary by these industries. So in the deck, you're going to see, and I'm not going to read through these, I want to be respectful of time, but you can see how these vary between 2 industries within the same sector. The next piece I'm going to get into is labor. When we look at labor, we look at 4 things, and they all, again, vary by industry. The supply coverage in your area. So when I say dress like the industry, what you're doing is you're analyzing which industries give you the highest economic multiplier, are in the highest demand from institutions, businesses, households, and governments, and you're determining how to go get them. So in this case, understanding if your labor profile fits these industries is critically important. And in a few slides, I'm going to talk about what happens when a company hires us and what they want to talk to us about when it comes to selecting a site. But when we look at labor, we look at supply coverage. So what is the company's need versus what you have available in your market? Growth of those occupations, so what your institutions are producing into the marketplace. Demand pressure. So think about the supply coverage factoring in competition for talent. So you might have a strong available workforce, but there might be 60 employers. You know, you could have 5 other ice cream companies in an area, and that's going to put a strain on the labor. That's going to cause that opportunity, whoever that manufacturer is, to pay at the 75th percentile of your market wage. So again, those are all important factors. And then lastly, on this industry side, once you've selected the industries and thought intimately about how your profile fits, you've got to go get them. And this is really important. Industries like to congregate at these conferences and expos every year. If you're targeting the manufacturing or advanced manufacturing sector, you're not going to know where to go. If you're targeting an industry, you know exactly where to go. This is just I provided a list of in food manufacturing and defense, what those key industries are. When we go sell to clients that are going to make site decisions, our firm is basically selling to the same people you're selling to. We go find them at their industry conferences, and we talk about our value proposition. And the best places to find them are not these site selection conferences. They're conferences where they're talking about their products and their facilities and so on and so forth. Simulate your market. This is really the exercise I would recommend everybody undertakes coming out of this, which is practice an objective exercise of attracting a business. So when we get hired, we are asked to, we're given a blank slate of the United States, and we are asked to, and a company will say, I want to build a 3 million square foot campus, $3 billion investment. Where should I go? On slide 11, this talks about the steps before governments are even contacted. First, we're asked to identify the factors and weight them with the company. We then have to eliminate markets. This is a big issue sometimes with communities that are trying to attract a business. Normally, I'll say 20, 30 communities get eliminated before a phone's even picked up. It's a desktop exercise. And you are never going to know about it. So Northwest Pennsylvania may have been listed in the top 25 of some large mega projects, and you would have no idea, because it's not like a company's going to call you and say, yeah, we were considering you, but we didn't even shortlist you. Markets are eliminated. And the fallacy is that you develop a site and you market it and you're ready to go. You're on the list. But the reality is there are analytics related to the workforce, infrastructure, supply chain that are being done through a data exercise where you won't even get a chance to get in the room and compete unless you know where you stand. So the reason we talk about simulating the process is so you know objectively what that looks like. And so as you continue to go down the list, I want to finish on this slide. After you've eliminated markets, then the sites come into play. And what happens is there's a site database that the corporation and their consultants have found, and they're looking through, and they're working with their own contracted broker. And then they'll start to contact local brokers and experts. After that is when governments are typically called. We're starting to see an erosion of the nationwide RFI process because a lot of companies are worried about the PR with that. So it's important to go through this exercise. And then the last slide on this section, when we're simulating, part of the reason doing an objective exercise is because economic developers are trained to think their community is the best because they're selling their community. Their data is the best. I did a SWOT analysis in 11 counties in Indiana once, and every county told me they had a highly skilled workforce when the data said one of the counties had a highly skilled workforce. So, but there's no one to blame. That's the job. Somebody needs to be looking at where you compare to California and Wyoming and Florida and Tennessee and Ohio. And then the other thing is, because of this, a lot of communities are stuck sitting on a site that remains vacant for a very long time because they've been competing in the wrong areas. So when we do this, what we look at, Our clients all have what's called a go, no-go, which is, for instance, you might need an air permit for a site for if it's a defense manufacturer, or you could be a defense manufacturer making submersives like submarines, and you have to be by a body of water. That's an example of a go, no-go. It just won't work. You can't even court it because of something going on with your community or your site. The 8 items in the middle: workforce availability, proximity to sites, supply chain, this entire list I have here on slide 12. These are the factors that are weighted by businesses. The only one that has a lot of subcomponents is quality of life. So I've heard some interesting things already. That's when companies start to look at, is there housing for my employees? Is it at a good price point for my employees? Are they paying less than 30% of their income toward housing? Every time a company comes and looks at an area, their executives want to know where they're going to get dinner nearby. So you also have to show off the community. You've got to show off Main Street. You've got to make it a good place, not for the worker and the plant manager, but for the executive popping in that they're going to want to go hang out. So these are all factors. I'm not going to go through them all. The last piece is incentives. So normally consultants say incentives are important, and communities say, oh, they're not that important. It sort of depends, but what we do in our matrix is we score every site, and incentives will typically pay for some gap, something lacking, which segues nicely into I'm gonna talk about incentives on my final point, but I've got a couple images. So this is an example of what a data analytics exercise looks like. Here we have a workforce matrix. This is one of our own products where we pull from a lot of federal workforce data, and we look at those things I mentioned earlier: supply coverage, growth, demand pressure, and cost. And we look at which markets are best, in this case for food processing, and the next slide it's for defense manufacturing. You can see that in this case, Northwest Pennsylvania has 2 green dots, which is really good, but what you want to know is where the other green dots are and where you might have, for each industry, yellow dots or red dots where you don't even compete. And that's what these things typically look like. You want to know how you look like on the desktop exercise. So I'm going to go to the last piece, which is organize your assets. So we've simulated. Now we've got to think about how we can rope that opportunity in once we've met the eye test for the industry. 3 things: dedicated resources, coordination with local governments, and sites and value proposition. On dedicated resources side, I want to use Jobs Ohio on slide 17 as an example because it was brought up earlier. The reason they have so much money, so many employees, is because they looked at a revenue stream they had at the state level, $700 million in liquor profits, and they invested it in economic development. In return, the bet was we will get other taxes in other forms. We'll get revenue back in other ways. What has happened since? The annual increase in what Jobs Ohio was getting in income taxes, so payroll taxes, when they started to now, $3.5 billion more annually, 39% increase. So they basically took one revenue stream, invested it to grow another revenue stream exponentially more. They also structured the organization where they're exempt from public record laws, which sounds shady, but what it's meant to do, it's meant to put the state in a position where they can negotiate like a business, because businesses are afraid for their own perceptions of talking to governments in a lot of cases, not every case. And then the capital also allowed them to have a larger pool of incentives, and you can see the table on the right that shows how big their incentive programs are. But they spend, their payroll is $30 million. It's pretty crazy for an economic development department if you think about it. They spend $40 million on professional services and research. So the whole point of this is, so this is a part you may not be able to solve today. This is really ambitious. They're the only ones that have done something and swung this heavily at a pitch. But if you get to the next page, here's some things we are seeing from some winning communities around the country. One, if you want a big mega project, you need mega project legislation. codified. You cannot go in and say, hey, company, I'm going to create new state legislation for you, because no company sees that as agile. The lawmaking process, unfortunately, I'm sure you're all great, but it just is not that fast. Refundable tax credits are critical. The states that win typically have refundable tax credits, meaning you can use them if your benefit exceeds your liability, you get cash in return. Tax abatements, if you want to play in heavy industrial, you have to be able to offer in a multi-state competition at least a 15-year tax abatement that is in cooperation with your schools. Large-scale infrastructure grant programs, you need to have a fund willing to pay for these big costs. And then your grants have to be flexible. So in the Jobs Ohio example, because they're not government, they're a private nonprofit, their programs aren't in the law, so they can be flexible in their negotiations. As I wrap up, the things I want to mention, there's a chart in here on page 19. Left to right, it's the states that have done the most deals over the last 5 years, economic development deals. So it's a really light shaded bar that you can't see because I think it just convolutes the graphic too much. But Michigan being the highest, which I hate to say as somebody who lives in Columbus, Ohio, we don't like Michigan. But Michigan, and then so the green bars show the incentive dollars per job, and the red bars, so how they rank in incentive dollars per job, the red dots show the state tax burden score. And the takeaway here is if you remove New York, California, and Massachusetts, which are just highly populated areas with lots of deal flow naturally, what you see is higher dollar value of incentives offered per job, and really not much of a state tax burden score influence. You're told that you always need to lower your taxes, but states do compete that have somewhat higher tax burdens, and you can see Pennsylvania and Ohio are very similar. In fact, the number one most complex state for local tax codes is Ohio, and the second is Pennsylvania. So again, you've got a lot of similarities here, but when you do level up and invest in your programs, that does have a positive effect. The last piece I'll mention here is the coordination with, I'm gonna be really brief on these last two slides. So coordination with state and local governments. I've seen states and communities fumble large projects. Think of it as a first date. They showed up, they didn't have their jackets on, they didn't bring the right people into the room. If you think big and get all the right people in the room that first time, that makes a huge deal. And the way you present yourself, the way your local governments know about your state programs and vice versa, does go a long way in this process. Getting to the site selection factors, this is the part you have to really look at in that simulation. So your metrics, when you think about those data points, they should be competitive. And if they're not, you've got to have an answer for that. So if you don't have enough labor force, you've got to show that your institutions can produce it, or you can turn around a certification program in 2 years. Think about Intel in Ohio. So the reason Intel really liked Ohio's workforce structure is because their workforce institutions create a program that can create a certification within a year in their industry that did not exist when they came in. Those are the types of solutions that can help win. And then lastly, that your community is willing to admit to its shortfalls and offer to address them in some sort of incentives. I'll leave with this. Sites are really important. The old adage is that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So if you have not started to get your sites ready, generally for a sector, and then fine-tune them for the industry, that's going to be critical. Labor has become as important as sites, but sites are still critical. And if you want to bet big, it's always good to bring in a developer to build a spec building that can be the first building of a campus, because there are a lot of hyperscalers, defense manufacturers that are getting new seed funding that are worried about the risk. And if you take the first risk with them on a building, that can go a long way. there's a lot in the industry I didn't cover here, but I wanted to try to be, as direct as possible with my comments today. Thank you again for having me as an outsider into this state to give you my perspective. Thank you to the Republican committee. I appreciate it, and I'm ready to answer any questions if you have them.
Well, thank you, testifiers, and we want to welcome Representative Marla Brown to south of here. Thank you for coming up and being here today as well. I'm going to start by asking, a little bit of a comment and then lead into a question here. But first, Mr. George, thank you for investing in Pennsylvania and, looking forward to, hopefully future investment. But your comment about generating your own power is crazy to me. I mean, to think that in this state, I think I'm the only Republican in the House that serves on both the Environmental and Energy Committee since they split them up. I'm a big energy guy. I come from coal, gas. We have windmills, solar panels, you name it in my area. We got it all. And to think that we're telling you that you have to generate your own energy to expand your business is crazy to me and totally wild. I mean, so I think we need to get that under control. I'm glad to see that we're going to be formally leaving Reggie in this state, but it doesn't matter where I've been. I went up to St. Mary's. They're a big powder metal industry up there. And, the one person, they use a lot of energy, and that's what they said, if it goes up, double and quadruple, it's going to be hard to do business in Pennsylvania. I've heard that all over the place, though, with the energy production. And, Mr. Wilt said it, we have gas here in Pennsylvania. I've got gas in my district, and we love it because we get local tax revenue off of it as well, which helps our local infrastructure and everything else. So, so how many employees do you have roughly?
So we have a little over 900 employees between our cone plant and our cookie plant.
So a little over 900 employees, and you'd want to potentially expand, over to 1,000 employees then, I'm assuming?
Oh, yeah, we've, again, been fortunate. We've done several expansions over the years, and we're going to do another one this summer on our cone plant. So, yeah, we'll be north of 1,000 very soon.
Yeah, so 1,000 person employer now has to build their own generation.
Yeah, I mean, you worry about new products and competition with competitors and investing in buildings and ovens. We build our own ovens as well. Now we have to worry about power as well. That's something that should be there.
It's just totally insane to me. I mean, you go back to Adam Smith. He said about specializing. I didn't know that Joy Cones was into building power. So it's I think you're probably West Penn out here, right? I mean, hopefully, West. Okay, yeah.
Energy.
So yeah, we're First Energy where I'm at as well, and it's we have some co-ops too. We like them too, but anyhow, it's. I mean, how we can't get enough energy on the grid in this state, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe they're building power plants just over the line in Ohio. I guess that's just the insanity to me that there's a reason they're building them right on the line. I mean, the economic environment in this state is not friendly to producing energy, and it's still not. This is outside of this, but the governor's energy plan is more tax and, more mandates of energy that it just doesn't work,
Representative Gephardt, if I may, as we're bringing new power production online, 3 Mile Island's coming back online, just south of here, Shippingport coming back online, primarily to fuel the data center. But I think in the economic development policy of permitting that a significant or even a small percentage of that new power should be dedicated to the market. We're at the tail end of the PJM grid here, and that's part of why Mr. George and other companies in our county struggle for power. Sitting behind me is our immediate past board chair, Brad Gosser, runs a several hundred acre industrial park and really can't expand now because of the lack of power. So as we're bringing these decommissioned power plants back online, I would encourage you to make sure that at least some portion of that power is available to the market and not just taken up by 1 or 2 data center users.
Yeah, I think it's just common sense that we need to produce more power overall. We have it in this state. I mean, just, like I said, and instead, every time I turn on the news, they're blowing up a coal plant or something. Well, I got enough coal in my district to feed them for years, and we'd be happy to. So, and natural gas, they are going to build another one at Homer City, but it's also supposedly going to be AI data center as well, but they're going to generate more than they need, so that will be putting more on the grid, which is good. Just what you told me there was just insane to me, and I apologize that you have to go through that in Pennsylvania. We should be just focusing on doing whatever we can to have you generate more jobs and investment in this state, because we desperately need you. Does anybody else have any questions? Go ahead, Representative Ledbetter.
Thank you, Deputy Chair Kephart, and testifiers this morning. I appreciate all of the very valuable feedback. Guys, this is really concerning stuff, and I hate to be an alarmist, but it seems like this committee continues to reiterate the same thing over and over again, that there's a disconnect between the regulatory environment and the policies that we have in place and where we as a Commonwealth want to go. However, within recent weeks, and as recently as a couple days ago, where we had a colleague vote for the Green New Deal to come into Pennsylvania through a bill that was targeted to a specific industry, we are now seeing how constituents are now somehow supporting the prohibitive regulatory environment to preserve continuity of the status quo, rather than stepping forward with the brave people and the visionaries that want to see Pennsylvania prosper. And so us as a Republican caucus and as a policy committee are tasked with this very difficult idea or challenge of threading the needle in ensuring that we don't dismiss their concerns and trepidation, but also not make the mistake or cardinal sin of somehow advocating for the very things that we've been fighting against: a bloated regulatory environment that prohibits industry, that targets specific segments or sectors unfairly. And so I have questions for all three. And so Acting Chair Kephart, if I may have some latitude, and colleagues, if you may humor me for a few more minutes than normal. Mr. McGill, you mentioned in Ohio an ROI calculator. While I can imagine that is a very complex project to outline and would require more time than we have here this morning, what would be some of the first steps we would need to take on in order to get a ROI calculator here in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I'll answer that in sort of two ways. One, you can, not a plug, you can hire somebody to do it. Any consultant who understands tax, fiscal, economic impacts, blending it into one, blending your programs in. The other is you can go, this is what happened to me. I was one of two people in the state that the governor looked at as a good analyst, and they had us internally build the tool just from us. The thing that is interesting about these things is there will be a proprietary nature. You'll have to think about protections and what you're able to. You want to be transparent with things, but you also don't want to give your sauce away to your competitors, and that's always a critical component. So there's a level of complexity related to the confidentiality of the tool, but those are your two options. You either bring in somebody who understands taxation and impacts and how to assess what you're getting back, or you get your two best people, and it's really a war room approach where you're trying to build in both quantitative and qualitative things, like how do we change our investment policy if it's an industry we like. Those things are things that you want to keep behind the curtain, but be able to deploy when the right opportunity comes along.
I appreciate that, Mr. McGill, and I would just say that while I don't sit on the Appropriations Committee, I understand that I have colleagues here today as well as those that I serve in on the House that do, that as we discuss the budgets, and I believe one of the testifiers alluded to how the governor is requesting that the legislature pass a timely budget. One of the things that should be part of these budget negotiations is the funding and completion of an ROI calculator, so that regardless of the amount of overspend that is ultimately forced down our throats and our taxpayers' throats, that moving forward we'll be able to actually determine whether a spend was good or if a spend was bad, or if proposals have the health necessary to be justified for the Pennsylvania taxpayer. Mr. George, I'll direct my next question to you. You mentioned that you have facilities in Flagstaff, Arizona. I can speak to how when I first ran for office, being a military brat, born and raised in Henderson, Nevada, I was accused of not being from here. And despite calling Pennsylvania home at 18 years old and this being home for my adult life, when you look at sites like Arizona, where you have no power issues and no demands to become a power generator, and yet right here in Pennsylvania, you're being asked to generate power. On the surface, we all can stand arm in arm with you and say, that's terrible. We want you to make ice cream cones. We want you to make pie crusts. We want you to help make memories. But then I get calls from farmers saying those dang data centers need to generate their own energy. And as we know, we can't target industries with legislation. And so do you have feedback for us that, while I'm not suggesting you reveal a position of being pro-data center or anti-data center, because I know you're pro-ice cream cone, how are we to fight for industries like yours so that we don't have prohibitive regulatory structures in place that require you to generate energy, but then on the very flip side of the coin, talk out of the other side of our mouth and say, this other industry should be penalized and create its own power? Do you have any insight into how you'd be able to navigate or approach that?
Well, I don't have any great insights other than say that I think you got to address the businesses that are here and the farmers that are here and have been a part of the Pennsylvania fabric for a long time. I am pro data centers. I don't want to make it sound like I'm not, and I think they will serve a purpose. Clearly, AI is a part of our now and future. So I think to me, it's all about energy for everybody. And I don't know the economics of the data center people. I don't know if, but you tend to think tech has a ton of cash, whereas other businesses, especially smaller businesses, don't. I don't know that we're a small business. We're kind of a medium size, but, every penny counts. And when you look at the economics for us to sink $8.5 million to put in our own power station and then maintain it, something that is not our focus. We're bakers. It's a huge task. It may be that, for the data centers, those are more in their wheelhouse. But I also think tech dollars and cash they have those funds probably.
I appreciate that, Mr. George, and I don't think that when Joy Cone started, there was an outcry that there would be a disproportionate amount of flour used or some sort of cereal grains, and so you guys should be forced to grow your own. The idea was that the community embraced the economic development, and the mills were happy to sell to you, and that the homes across the community didn't suddenly cry out that you guys should suddenly now be forced to grow your own wheat and cereals so that way you could create your own products. So I appreciate you showcasing the contrast between the logic being applied in an equal way. One more question, Acting Chair Kephart, if I may. Mr. Wilt, you speak to your work and historical insight as a member of the body, and then transferring that into Penn Northwest, and I know the community is very grateful for that work, and I'm excited to see some similar efforts being made in Columbia County, back in my district. But when there are, I'm a local government guy. I'm a small government guy. I think less government's best government. But when I see local municipalities begin to structure ordinances in an effort to anticipate the development of their communities, yes, that's code for data centers. I see language in there specific to sound output or water usage. And everyone saber rattles and starts to say that this is what we need. But when they put in there a 50 decibel limit, they also ban the development of a hospital because Geisinger Medical Center has a 60 decibel output.
That's right.
And there are homes all around that campus where kids have birthday parties in their backyards and homeowners enjoy cigars on their front porch and regular life occurs and nobody has their ears vibrated off. And when they put limitations on water and say we're going to ruin our water table because data centers, a 100-acre data center uses 113 million gallons, but a Love's truck stop uses 110 million gallons. They've just banned service stations and truck stops off of inner city corridors that exist like in my district where Interstate 80 runs right through. So as you're working with the stakeholders within your region on development, how are you able to advocate for an agnostic approach so that way, while they may seek to doing one thing, they're not cutting themselves off for a pathway forward in another?
Yeah, age-old question, and it reminds me of a decade ago with fracking. You know, how at that time I was doing some work with the American Petroleum Institute, really working the grass tops, and those would be county commissioners and township supervisors and attending their statewide functions, but also, you know, boots on the ground, going to these hot spots and talking about the truth to beat down some of these things that cause development to be stopped. You know, you're correct on the usage of water in data centers. What gets left off is the second part of that data centers are recycling it sometimes up to 90% of that water. So yes, they may be using it, but they're also recycling it and bring it back through the system, so it's not all lost. You know, thankfully in our area, and I say this not only for Mercer County, but what I see in surrounding counties, is we really do have the right people in the right seats at the right time right now to develop this region. We don't see a lot of headwinds in local economic development policy. Now, we've seen some of it primarily on solar. The reason we haven't seen it in our county, we have one data center project in our county right now, and it sits alongside the river and it has its own substation. So we don't really have some of the, we don't have a knee-jerk reaction to that particular facility. But living through the fracking industry challenges, most recently, and our commissioners that are in the audience can speak to some of the things that are happening locally with solar, because we have had a proliferation of solar panels in the county. It really comes down to education. But what I would say because I know Pennsylvania is a big state and a diverse state, and I used to have fun with my colleagues from the Southeast when they said, hey, I was out by your district over the weekend. I'm like, oh yeah, where were you? He goes, oh, I was at the Penn State game. I'm like, man, you got another 2.5 hours to go to get out here. You know, here's why rural Pennsylvania matters. Because every 10 years, we lose congressional seats. And the only place to go to hold our own is into rural Pennsylvania. The Southeast doesn't want any more development. The mid-state, around the capital region, they're really reluctant to chew up more farmland for any reason. So where do you go? And if Pennsylvania is going to be relevant on the national scene, the legislature collectively needs to give tools to those counties that are in targeted areas to allow them to develop their economies in the way the market is demanding. And what's frustrating to me as a rural legislator for 10 years, and now as a half a decade into my career as an economic developer, is a one-size-fits-all approach. And I liken where we're at right now with the funding for local economic development organizations where we were about 15 years ago with funding of our local tourism agencies. for some reason, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh hated the idea that rural counties would have a hotel tax. And they fought us, and they fought us, and they fought us, and they fought us, and we eventually got a hotel tax for certain classes of counties, and we've completely revolutionized our local visitors bureaus because of it. You know, the same sentiment could be transferred over to economic development. When you look at counties, we can look at, and I know there's a debate raging now in the legislature about what do we do about these games of skill, and I know the industry has agreed to some level of taxation and regulation, and where's that funding going? And I know, you know, the big debate now is looking like it might go to the transportation area. Or, you know, that's an option. We have an 18% Johnstown flood tax on liquor in this state. You know, a small piece of that coming to the economic development realm might make some sense. And it could be targeted by certain class counties, which would positively impact rural Pennsylvania. So, you know, on the micro, local governments, elections have consequences, and I never hesitated when I was an elected official to get involved in local politics because I knew that most of the challenges facing my constituents were really imposed upon them by local government. So, you know, elections do have consequences, and I encourage you to work within your district to make sure that business-friendly people do get elected to those positions, those that are open-minded to hearing both sides of the issue. I mean, that's, I remember Governor Casey way back when he got elected in his inaugural address. He said the challenge for all of us, and it was a joint session, all 252 members, was at the end of the day, we can ask ourselves, what did we do when we had the power? So I think that's a lifelong question for any elected official. What did we do when we had the power? And so, you know, I challenge our team here in our little corner of the universe in Mercer County, you know, what did we do when we had the opportunity to make tremendous impacts in our community? And that's what drives us every day.
Thank you, Mr. Wilt. In the spirit of accuracy, I'll just read my closing remarks, and I appreciate everyone's testimony. It's clear, based on everything that you gentlemen have shared this morning, that there's a growing influence within Pennsylvania. And I believe that that influence and a campaign for that influence is being led by Food and Water Watch and its political arm, Food and Water Action. They oppose natural gas, they oppose nuclear energy, they oppose pipelines, they oppose modern agriculture, and most recently, they oppose data centers. In other words, to my colleagues and to those that may be watching this, they oppose the very systems that power our economy here in Pennsylvania, that keep energy affordable and put food on the table for working families and fixed income seniors like those in my district. And yet, this agenda is not being driven by the people who will bear the cost. This agenda is backed by millions of dollars flowing through large foundations and dark political donor networks far removed from the communities here in the Commonwealth that depend on reliable energy and economic growth. We cannot follow that roadmap. If we follow that roadmap, we do not get progress. We will get higher costs. We will get weaker infrastructure. We will forfeit opportunities in economic development, and we will have fewer bright futures for the young people that we represent. We should be clear-eyed about this being proposed throughout the legislature on both sides of the aisle and how it will ultimately impact the future of Pennsylvania. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Ledbetter. And we're going to go to one final question before we move on to panels from Representative Banta.
Thank you, Deputy Kephart. Thank you guys for being here. Rod, you touched on something important to me, fracking in the oil and gas industry. When I got out of the military, that was the job I had out, being out in the woods and well tending, 60, 70 wells and a compressor. I learned a lot. What what I remember most is my parents, and we were farmers and struggling out there, and a guy come along and said, we're going to give you, we're going to give you whatever the 7% or whatever it was royalty and 200 cubic square, and we're going to drill out here, and everybody was scared of that. All the farmers, they didn't know what to think, and then finally they all got on board, and all of a sudden we had an opportunity for a $20,000 check came to my dad's house. We couldn't believe it. We're talking about 1981 or 2. And it saved us. So that's economic development. Again, I'll give you another quick example. A guy named Beryl Salmon up home. His dad in his 70s he's got 1,000 acres up there, and he put, 7 or 8 duplexes on his property for future income for him and his kids. He's long gone, and his son is running it. Veryl Salmon's running it now. The septic now has problems. So he gives me he gives me a call, and I went out there and looked at it, got a hold of DEP, but long story short, what a regulatory mess. And I'm sure Stad wouldn't have done that back then if he would have the same challenge that Veryl has now. So I guess as I've been here for a few years and we talked about killing Reggie and now we can move on, my question to you guys is how different is Ohio and Pennsylvania in the environmental regulations? How do we compete with that? How different is it? Can you expand on that?
I'll just say very briefly, it is much better now than it was under previous administrations. I think there has been, I know the fees are high in Pennsylvania compared to Ohio. There's no doubt about that. I know Pennsylvania has done a really good job in recent years, though, of eliminating the long backlogs and waiting for permits. I think our local governments, who Mercer County Conservation District and other that spearhead some of those when it comes to an economic development project, are not waiting forever for permits. That's been replaced by waiting long time for electricity studies, that are now out 2 years and tens of thousands of dollars. I think where Ohio really gets us, though, is they have a lot more tools in their toolbox to be flexible, and they have invested heavily in sewer infrastructure. Their tact has been, let's get as many through larger development districts, let's get as many users within a development district on public sewer as we possibly can. And in Pennsylvania, we have a very fractured sewer treatment infrastructure, because every township or every group of townships kind of gets to set their own rules. Now, again, that goes contrary, to maybe the Republican values of local government is great government, but in some areas, like you just mentioned, in sewage treatment, we need some more tools in the toolbox in order for Pennsylvania to compete, especially in rural areas on sewer.
Thank you again. From my days as a well tender back in the 80s until now, a couple of years ago, I had a little event up home, and we went down to the French Creek and we pulled up 3 hellbenders in about 10 minutes, our state amphibian. So to the point of, Titusville and whatever year that was, 1859 with the first well, is that right? I guess that right? From then till now, I mean, that proves that French Creek is in great shape. And so these people, naysayers and over-regulating what Pennsylvania can do, my concern is that we will over-regulate ourselves right out of business. And guys like you wouldn't have started, your ancestors wouldn't have started that. So that's my concern. Thank you all.
Thank you, Representative Banta. And we're going to move on to panel 2 now. Thank you all for your testimony today.
Royalties were 7 or 8%.
All right, so we're going to move on to panel 2 here, and if we bring attention here to the panel 2, we're going to introduce them here. We got Jake Rickert with the Penn Northwest Development Corporation, and then Jim Landino with JCL Development, and former Representative Mark Longetti of the City of Hermitage. You guys will be testifying here, and if we could limit that to 5 minutes on the testimony, so we can proceed here. But and for a question, so go ahead, Jake.
Good morning, committee members. First, I want to extend my sincere appreciation to all of you for making the trek out today. It's great seeing some familiar faces from 2 years ago when we last held this. I wanted to take a few minutes here and talk about how Penn Northwest has really set ourselves up to be part of this repopulation workforce development effort. About 5 years ago, Penn Northwest conducted what we called a listening tour, where we went out and met with the majority of our 170 members, just to talk to them about, what are some of the needs of the business community. We asked what services and tools are beneficial in the support of expansion and relocation projects, what programs they use to assist with equipment purchases and facility upgrades, and most importantly, where are some of the gaps, where are some existing gaps to keeping this place, keeping a strong, vibrant economy here in Mercer County. Regardless of the size, the industry, the product that they make, the response was consistent. We need people. So today, our local companies are constrained more by workforce availability than they are by revenue potential. Declining population has done more than create an estimated daily workforce shortage of 1,500 to 2,000 workers. It impacts our tax base, it limits the funding for critical infrastructure, increases the burden on our remaining residents, challenges the viability of restaurant and retail that wants to pop up on our main street. It raises the cost per student at our school systems, and it makes external investment and external investors weary of this area. While these challenges are not unique to Mercer County, and I'm sure many of you have heard or been a part of many of these conversations, I wanted to highlight some of the steps we've taken to remedy this population decline and where we could use some support in rebuilding and stabilizing our population. Penn Northwest has positioned ourselves at the forefront of how economic development organizations can lead and facilitate efforts to repopulate rural communities. With funding secured by Representative Wentling, 4 years ago we launched what we call the Homegrown Initiative. Our Homegrown Initiative was built and centered on 3 core objectives: career awareness, career placement, and civic engagement. We identified that there was a critical gap between our education system and our local businesses, and that was our kids did not understand what our businesses did in their own backyard. For too long, we've had the narrative of, you need to grow up, get your education, and get out of town. And we needed to address that. We needed to get these students to begin looking inward as to where they could find a family-sustaining wage right here in our community. The Homegrown Initiative connects hundreds of students with employers on a monthly basis, and we do that through in-school engagement, through some of our series, like our Workforce Wednesday series. We do that through virtual reality experiences, where when we can't take kids to a site, we bring the site to the kids. We do conduct our site tours, and we have a very heavy hand in trying to build business and school partnerships, whether that's events, one-off events, whether that's a rotating series. Starting as young as 5th grade, we begin laying the foundation for the next generation to understand the variety of ways they can earn a family-sustaining job here in Mercer County. From junior year of high school through a student's path, wherever they fall off the education ladder, whether that's an MBA or maybe they graduate from a trade school, we position ourselves to be kind of this career counselor, career placement folk, where our young adults, our young professionals can reach out to us at any time, send us a resume, talk about what they want to do, and we as economic developers who have great relationships with our business community can help connect these kids where they need to go. And of course, once we get these kids connected, we try to help our businesses through programs like the on-the-job training, through the PA Career Link. The internship fund has been a tremendous asset for this community. So we help both the businesses and our young professionals. That's really on our talent, our population, our talent retention side. Mercer County is home to about 30,000 young adults under the age of 24. So we have a number of kids. However, we still continue to lose just shy of 1% of our population every year. On our talent attraction side, excuse me, on our talent attraction side, if you look inside your packet, Penn Northwest and the Homegrown Initiative launched a campaign through Make My Move. Make My Move is a program where you promote and market your county to remote workers within your designated region. So through our Make My Move initiative, we look to attract remote workers that have a family, make at least the median income, and live at least 100 miles away from the community. When we launched this program as just a pilot, we had a modest goal of just attracting 5 families to Mercer County. Here we are a year later. We have over 1,200 families that have applied to move to Mercer County, and we've generated over 416,000 views. That's 416,000 people clicking on Mercer County, seeing what our community is about, checking out our parks and recs, our local businesses, what our housing inventory looks like. So far, we have relocated 19 individuals, contributing an estimated $530,000 in annual economic impact, which includes $62,000 in local tax revenue. Really why we went after this program, if you look nationwide, there's some areas that have built their own, Tulsa, Oklahoma being one. Over 4 years, they brought in over 1,300 residents, and it's been calculated their ROI is about $4.30 for every dollar they spend. And it's revamped their landscape to be very tech-friendly, and brought a lot of Main Street dining, a lot of new tech-based businesses. We've figured out that in economic development, where the people go, the businesses go. It's no longer the build it and the people will come. Now it's get the people and the businesses will follow. Beyond the direct fiscal impact that our Make My Move program has had, this effort has revealed a significant external market for residential development. Typically, developers look at the internal market. What can your internal market support? Looking in rural Mercer County, with an average housing price of about $175,000 to $200,000, it's very difficult to build a home these days where we can kind of fit in that gap. What we're seeing is our market rates here and the cost to build is up here, and this gap makes it unattainable. But through finding these external stakeholders that are interested in relocating here, with an average income of about $112,000, almost doubling our local average income, it's presented an opportunity where housing development has become an option again. While we believe we've made great strides towards building a stable population, we still have some core issues we need to solve, specifically around the difficulty in building market rate housing in these rural communities with the cost to build that's almost identical with that of a Pittsburgh market or a sub-market of Pittsburgh. We need to find ways to entice our developers to build here in Mercer County. And I would also, encourage the support of programs like our industry partnership program that Pennsylvania offers, and programs like the Manufacturing Training to Career program, both of which have been paramount in helping our kids identify and learn what is going on right here in our backyard. With that, I'll pass it over to Jim Landino, the unicorn developer of Mercer County.
Well, listen, and probably really from a dovetail standpoint, it does work. So 30 years ago, I moved to Sharon, to Mercer County from upstate New York, and really don't see the community line. So the challenge this area has, too many municipalities all bolting together, trying to compete for services. And we could talk about schools and the fact that we're probably going to have you guys force some consolidation. And I think that is going to have to come in from the state level. But I moved here, transform business. So I am from the electrical transform business. So I have signed no NDAs. So I can tell you all you want to know about power generation. The fact that Wheatland has 400 PSI of natural gas there, that we could build a power plant very quickly. I'm trying to get that 5 minutes. We own over 100 properties in Mercer County, and we're all over the place, whether it's warehouses, commercial, this or that. But one of the things we learned, 2019, I have an article where the Sharon Herald said, and I literally, asshole in town, said, if we build it, they will come. And he's right. That was wrong. The truth of the matter is what we had to do was create quality of life features that were going to make people want to relocate here. And we heard that from the first gentleman, right? Part of the challenge is you think just because you have a property, you have a space that it's going to work. It doesn't work that way, right? So where are we going to eat? Where are we going to? So what's happening? You're going to hear it from our recreational guys. We have built over 50 apartments. We've been told by other developers in other states that are doing well that you need to get 200 median income people living in downtown Sharon as fast as possible. Again, our focus downtown Sharon. And what we didn't understand is there's gentrification and there's another word called gentilification. We're not really stumbling into gentrification. Gentrification is wealthy people moving into low-income housing areas and pushing them out. That's not going to happen here. We have no draw to bring in wealthy people immediately, right? There's no beachfront property. So what are we going to do? We're going to have to continue to make a move with median income players to come into our area and make a difference, right? So to make my move, some of the other stuff. I'm trying to move along really quickly, but the downtown apartments that we built, 22 apartments, $6 million project, no public funding, all private financed by ourselves, right? So, and again, I'm going to slow down, come back. We have done very well in Mercer County. When I say we, our organization, myself personally, by utilizing what's here. What's here is a high efficiency of life, right? We can get anything done. We have friends, we have neighbors, you can do things here. And I think probably what I want to say about that is potentially one of our problems is attitude, right? So we keep looking for some, he uses the word unit, we keep waiting for somebody to show up with this silver bullet that's going to save the day. That's not going to happen. It's going to be the Joy Cones, it's going to be the JCL developments, it's going to be the JCL Energies. We started JCL Energy in 2020 as a startup company. Transformer business, grew it to $100 million in 3 years in Sharon, Pennsylvania. Now, I don't brag about that very often because we aren't high tech, but the market that we serviced was in the data mining side, right? So we found the niche. The niche was here. We had the people already here to move into that. So I think, again, as you guys take this back to Harrisburg, where are the problems? Well, the problems are, like, you need to find more guys that look like me. We have to encourage guys that look like me, that have shown up with a liquidity event, that have shown up with a lot of energy, a lot of let's go get it done, and then let's go get it done. I don't know that we're doing enough for the guys that look like me. And I don't beg. Park will tell you, I have never asked him for anything. I get asked for more shit than anybody in Mercer County. And I'm telling, and they will tell you that at the Community Foundation, that we are asked for more donations than the foundation gets. The funnel runs to us. And I think when you guys start to realize that the private-public funding and the partnership that operates, JCL Development operates as a municipality within the city of Sharon municipality. When the city of Sharon needs help, we help. When the city of Hermitage would need our help, anything, we show up. So how do we go and build upon that? And from my perspective, there are a few things you could do. We're going to have to talk about some low-income financing. Forget the grants, guys. They're a pain in the ass. You've got to spend a lot of time managing them. There's too many. If you guys could figure out a way to show up with some financing to get the deals going. Here's the problem. $1 million spent in Mercer County is a $500,000 appraisal. So nobody wants to do that. That doesn't win. You guys may not be seeing that in other districts, but I can tell you in Mercer County, $1 spent by JCL is 50 cents lost currently. That's a true story. And nobody, I don't talk about that because that's the negativity of it. But when you guys go back, you need to understand that. But you're not going to be able to throw money at a guy, right? If you said to me, hey, I got $500,000, but I got 7,000 strings attached to it, that doesn't get me excited. Say, hey, Jimmy, I've got $2 million of incubation dollars at 2% with a 20-year amortization on it, you get me excited. I think if you can get me excited, you can get somebody else excited. So how do we bolt on more of those types of opportunities? And again, do I have all the answers? Hell no. But I do know that some of the stuff, working with what we have, recognizing that just because it was a 23-acre industrial site on the river in downtown Sharon doesn't mean it's that forever, right? So now we're taking that site, reconfiguring it. Residential, I'm in the middle of an Act 2 clearance deal. I may knock on your doors, and guys, I don't know, it looks like it's going great. I'm 98% sure we're going to get there. But if I don't get there, we can't put residential there. It already has all of the utilities. All of the infrastructure is already sitting there. So to listen to Rep. Ledbetter talk about that, I do think we have some competing interests, But in the same token, I think we have to play to our strengths, right? Water that comes in from the aqua plant in Sharon gets distributed through all of this area and then gets discharged back into the river. That sounds like a pretty good ecosystem, right? I mean, nobody really wants to hear that, but that's the truth. The data center that's going to show up in Sharon, again, no NDA. I'm talking to them every day. I brought them here, me and my dog. The only reason they're there is because we found the power and then called our buddies, right? True story. But those guys are going to use nothing, but they're going to drop millions of dollars into the city of Sharon School District in the Mercer County. And people aren't talking about that. Like, this is what's going to make the difference, guys. You understand it. How does everybody else start to get there? And with that, I'm done. I tried. I had a lot more information, but.
So when I first ran for office 20 years ago, imagine the conversation. I knocked on Jim's door. A lot of passion, a lot of good ideas, a lot of good work. Good morning, Chairman Gephardt and members of the House Republican Policy Committee. We want to thank you for spending time here and on this important topics. I want to particularly thank Representative Park Wentling for requesting this hearing and hosting it right here in Hermitage. So my name is Mark Longetti, and I'm the Director of Business and Community Development for the City of Hermitage. Some things you may not know about Hermitage. We're the 4th largest land city in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, over 30 square miles of land. We're the largest population city in Mercer County, just over 17,000 residents. This is our 50th anniversary of the name Hermitage. So if you go back in time, Hermitage used to be Hickory Township. That's part of the reason why we have so much territory. We actually surround all of the Shenango Valley. There's portions, you can be in downtown Sharon, be very close to a portion of Hermitage. In 2024, I know there was just some talk about merger and consolidation. In 2024, the city of Hermitage and the borough of Wheatland pulled off a successful merger. It was recognized with the Governor's Award for Local Government Excellence in the Intergovernmental Cooperation category. Wheatland was a small community, about 600 residents, but over 30 businesses, a very significant industrial area that includes Wheatland Tube Company, which is part of Zeckelman Industries. I'm here to tell you that Hermitage has the desire and the room to grow. The city possesses many of the attributes that you would consider fundamental for growth. For example, the Hermitage School District consistently ranks in the top 15% statewide for student achievement. Taxes are the lowest amongst the Shenango Valley municipalities. The city has strong safety forces and a low crime rate. It also hosts the central commercial district for the Shenango Valley and has attractive recreational assets like Beal Park. We'll hear from Tom Roskus in a minute, as well as the Hermitage Athletic Complex. We have the road infrastructure, nearby interstates. We're very close to I-376, I-80, I-79, proximity to Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Erie, other metropolitan areas. And as we heard in the first panel, we have significant employers like Joy Cone and, as I mentioned, Wheatland Tube. First National Bank, it's now headquartered in Pittsburgh, but the back office jobs for the bank, which grew up in Mercer County, are right here in Hermitage. So we have all these elements of growth, but we have an issue. And the fundamental issue is the lack of available and attractive housing stock. And it's become a choke point in the city in the last couple decades. Scaled new housing development has been virtually non-existent in the past 2 decades. Meanwhile, when we talk to local realtors, they'll tell us that there's a strong demand for people that want to live in the city of Hermitage. They just can't find the available housing stock. Last year, we commissioned a study by an international firm by the name of Smith Group to prepare a housing market analysis because we wanted to put some numbers on all of this. We looked at both citywide as well as this campus that we're at right now, the Linden Point Innovative Business Campus, in part because we have land. The city has land available that it owns right here at Linden Point. We recently rezoned it to allow for multifamily housing. What the Smith Group study told us in part was that the city's on a growth trajectory. They estimated that we would grow by about 1,300 residents by 2032. That's about an 8% growth. And that there's a need for 679 homeowner units and another 489 rental units. Almost half of that demand is actually in the upper category. So when you look at the housing unit shortage, it is in the higher priced housing is where the shortage is. Currently, the city is working with a nonprofit by the name of Community Hope Investment Partnerships. This is a local collection of mostly retired, but some still in the workforce, executives that have been here many years and are committed to the city. And we have been putting out the opportunities here at Linden Point for housing development and have garnered significant interest from both local and regional housing development companies. Linden Point is ideally situated for this. As I mentioned, we have the land, so we're not so interested in making money on land. We want to help offset a developer's costs. We have roadway infrastructure. We have proximity to utilities. It's a good location near the interstates. So it gives us an opportunity to develop housing, and we think we'll have a project here not too long into the future. We're also looking at some of the more rural sections of Hermitage. About a third of Hermitage doesn't have sewer infrastructure. Our sewer wastewater treatment plant has the capacity to treat that. So we've been doing projects. We've had a recent project on South Neshannock Road. Before that project was even completed, we had 4 new building permits. So people were looking for that infrastructure. Similar project is being planned on Dermond Road. And those projects have been supported from some of the dollars in Harrisburg through the programs that you all support. The Commonwealth programs like H2O PA, PA Water, Small Water and Sewer helped us provide some dollars that we matched to deliver those projects. I want to again thank Representative Wentling for helping us garner those dollars. We're also focused on housing rehabilitation because we do have some older neighborhoods in the city that need attention. We have a partnership along with the City of Sharon with the Youngstown Neighborhood Development Corporation. They have scaled up housing rehab. And so they've attracted dollars from the Federal Home Loan Banks and other sources. We are encouraged by the Shapiro administration's Housing Action Plan for Pennsylvania. We believe that it is a well thought out plan that can be adapted here locally. It correctly prescribes a multifaceted approach, which includes dedication of state funds to help offset development costs. We heard Rod Wild talk about that need. That also emphasizes the need for regulatory reform, both at the state and the local level. We are internally looking at our own processes. How can we streamline it? How can we make it more efficient and less costly? On the population front, as Jake Rickard just testified, we've partnered with Penn Northwest Development, the City of Sharon, and the town of Greenville on the Make My Move initiative. Make My Move is essentially a marketing effort that began in rural Indiana to attract remote workers living in cities who want to get out of the city and find a more rural setting where they don't have the congestion and the high cost and there's a better quality of life. Last year, 5 movers came to Mercer County under the program. 4 out of those 5 moved into the city of Hermitage. They brought with them an average individual income of over $100,000. Make My Move was created by the folks that founded Angie's List, so it's a very professional operation. And it's a tool for repopulating communities like ours. Our movers came from San Diego, Davenport, Florida, Staten Island, New York, and Shaker Heights, Ohio. Speaking of Ohio, it's right at our western border, and it presents an opportunity for us here in the city of Hermitage, and I think the Shenango Valley as a whole. When we did an analysis of our earned income tax, non-residents for the state of Pennsylvania pay that earned income tax. And so we can see where they're coming from. About a third of the workers that work every day in Hermitage live in Ohio. That is an opportunity for us to attract those folks. Why are they in Ohio? In part because they can't find a housing stock here. So that's why we're focused on that. They want amenities. That's why we've been focused on that. That's what Jim Landino just testified about. The redevelopment of the Shenango Valley Mall into Hickory Fields. We have Target coming, Chick-fil-A, Chili's, Longhorn Steakhouse, more announcements to come. Buell Park, as I mentioned, Tom Roskis will talk about what the wonderful asset that is. Free golf and a lot of other amenities. In our Hermitage Athletic Complex, that's why we're so focused on continuing to build that out. Housing and repopulation challenges are common issues in many, if not all, Western Pennsylvania communities. We believe that strong partnerships between state and local governments, economic development organizations, the business community, and individuals can meet these challenges. Again, I want to thank the members of the House Republican Policy Committee for receiving this testimony and obviously available for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Longetti. And we're going to go to Representative Marla Brown.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here. I represent Lawrence County, so I'm your next door neighbor. So I'm very envious of everything I'm hearing. So I have a question for Mr. Reichert and then one also for Mr. Landino. So this Make My Move initiative is very intriguing, and I love what you've done. And you've attracted quite a few families at a higher level income. And I'm interested in what the primary attraction ended up being for those groups.
Yeah, well, there was a couple things that we've noticed are reoccurring themes. So first and foremost, the quality of life here compared to where these people are coming from or applying from. We have a fantastic quality of life in rural Pennsylvania. Transportation, your travel time is minimal. You can get all over the county in 30 minutes. When we look at crime rates, these people a majority of the applicants are coming from cities with substantially higher crime rates. We've got safe communities, affordable communities, great parks, trails, recreation. One of the biggest ones, if you look on our Make My Move website, we have someone that moved here, and they post, I think, like every 3 days talking about, they came from San Diego and they now have their dream home. They're like, we thought there was going to be another 40 years before we could have our dream home. The people here are friendly. They get connected quickly. We have an abundance of assets here. The big issue has been, with these 1,200 applicants, truthfully, has been finding them a home. Yep. They're coming here looking for a quality home in that well over the $250,000 mark, trying to buy something where their family can grow up in.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we have similar issues, obviously, in Lawrence County. So with the housing crisis, Mr. Landino, what was the attraction? Like, how do we attract developers that want to, you say that the value is half of what, you're able to build these homes at. So what was the attraction for you?
Well, from our perspective, we recognized that we weren't going to gain any ground unless we got into the housing game, right? So we thought we could build a restaurant and they would come. That was a lie, right? So there's plenty of places for people to eat. I think when you look at what we have in housing here and the fact that most of these areas are blighted,
right?
Many of these neighborhoods. So I think when you look at like what we've been able to do, it's amazing how many blocks of buildings we own. Right, so I think what needs to happen, and from a tackling standpoint, is the municipalities are going to have to figure out where they think the most opportunistic inventory might be, and literally figure out a way to take hold of it. This YNDC thing, Youngstown has the housing group over there, and I don't know how many properties they've taken on over there, but they have realized, like, you know, when we first started, let me slow down. When we first started, we thought the nucleus could be downtown Sharon, right? That we could expand off downtown Sharon and make our way, and actually, we've turned it around now. We realize that probably for us, it's Buell Park. So now we start to radiate from Buell Park down, so you start to look at some of these neighborhoods that could be gentrificated, right? So that could be converted, because part of the problem with the developer it's a real deal. Like I said, $1 in is not $1 out.
Right.
So how do we take some of the housing stock that's there and convert it to something that makes an investor or a person, even somebody moving in? I buy a house for $250, I put $50,000 in. Do I have a $350,000 house? I think the majority of the population is looking for that.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to get that there other than we can't fix a neighborhood with one house.
Right.
We fix a neighborhood by somehow taking over that neighborhood. And that's probably not the right phrasing, but it is the truth.
And are there financing incentives that would actually make rural development more competitive?
None that's available that I'm aware of now.
No, what would it?
Yeah,
what would
I
that be?
think you're into that. I think you're into the finance side of it, because for us, we've been able to use our own cash to get in. And we probably own, and Sarah, my realtor partners here, we probably own 25 plus homes, very strategically located around the school, around the park, things like that. But we're gonna have to figure out if there's some first mortgage, some first bite of an apple that maybe could come from some program. You know, recognizing, right, people got to sign guarantees, they're gonna have a lien on their home, things like that. But I think people will, listen, I sign documents all the time. You know, no, seriously, you know what I mean? It's like at some point in time, it's like you're gonna have to guarantee payment, right? And I think that people will realize that. And again, as the neighborhoods move into higher values, the hand is there, right? So we know that worst case scenario as a banker,
Right.
I'm taking the banking side, what's the worst case scenario? We take the house back, but it appreciated in value. That's where we've got to go. We've got to get that appreciation, but the first bite's really the problem,
All
the
right.
challenge.
Thank you so much. Oh,
Can I add one thing? I'm
Sure.
sorry. When we talk about rural development and getting developers excited and invested into the community, you know, last 2 weeks ago, I just went down to Mars, PA, checked out, I believe it's called Meter Heights. So it's a large community built. They actually have the center of these housing units. They have their bar, restaurant, a small little shopping place, yoga studio, hair salon. They have everything from single family units to apartments to condos. You know, the going rate where it starts is about $2,500 a month, and it climbs to $4,000 pretty quickly. You know, when we talk about building in rural Mercer County, you know, that brick costs the same, whether that brick and that 2x4 costs the same, whether it went to Mars, PA, and they got a $4,000 rent attached to it, or Mercer County where, you know, rent's in that $1,000 to $1,500 range. So, you know, when I look at housing development, I look at it as in two categories. I look at the vertical build cost and the horizontal build cost. So, you know, when we talk about site prep, our utilities, the groundwork that needs done, foundations put in, that's kind of that horizontal build. And the vertical build is where these developers can kind of make their money. So on the, you know, on that horizontal build, I think programs like the sites program that I believe is in the Housing Action Plan or kind of commented to in the Housing Action Plan can be huge in helping these developers offset, you know, $1 million plus worth of work just to get the site ready. You know, on the horizontal build, I do think there's potential for some programs like the RACPs, maybe not at that 50% rate that we have on the commercial build, even a 25-30% rate, and modify some of the other aspects to a RACP could be beneficial in helping. You know, at the end of the day, you know, if I'm a developer, do I spend the same amount on the bricks for $1,000 rent or $4,000 rent? It's an easy answer.
good feedback. Thank you.
So we're going to turn to Representative Wentling.
Just to kind of comment off of what Marla said about, you know, Lawrence, Mercer County, we do have the Lawrence Mercer County Manufacturers Coalition that we actually had them testify at Marla's policy committee hearing last week, which was excellent. So there is some cooperation there. And I don't know, Jake, if you want to speak to that, but I do want to thank you for your service in the National Guard. And I also wanted you to just quickly comment on the award, the national award you won in regards to the work you've been doing here with Penn Northwest. And and then the final thing real quick is just if you could talk maybe about the key to getting the kids to the different trade shows and things in regards to busing. So maybe those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So Penn Northwest has worked alongside Forward Lawrence and the newly formed Lawrence Mercer Manufacturing Coalition. And we all work together because we have similar alignments. You know, what's good for Lawrence County is good for Mercer County and vice versa. When we can keep kids in our local companies here, we give our companies and our kids the opportunity to grow, make family sustaining wages. We incentivize our companies to continue to expand. You know, when workforce development becomes your biggest barrier and we have tens of thousands of kids in the backyard, we have to do what we can to help connect them. So there's a lot of cross-border work that we do. We work very, very well with Forward Lawrence. And over the last couple years, through our Homegrown Initiative, to Representative Wentling's point, I did win the Young Professional to Watch at the PETA conference across the state. And then this year we're being recognized with the Governor's Award through PA Career Link for our workforce development initiatives. But at the end of the day, you know, again, it is all about driving what's happening in our community. What do career paths look like? We always joke and talk about, you know, kids know their big five. They know firefighter, policeman, lawyer, doctor. You know, they don't have the knowledge that what's a financial advisor? What's business development look like? You know, what does it look like working inside a manufacturer? You talk to these kids' perspective on what manufacturing it is, and they think back to those, you know, if you remember those old black and white 1940s films of people going into the coal mines, that's their best reference to what manufacturing is. And that's not what it is at all. You know, it's vitally important that we continue to drive kids into what our community has. And that includes healthcare, not to, you know, manufacturing's an easy one, but, you know, that's our healthcare. That's our you know, I was just at just presented at the Council for County Bar Leaders, the conference for county bar leaders. And we talked about, you know, the lack of legal lawyers and legal firms across rural Pennsylvania. I mean, the average age is 55 plus, and most of these communities have 4, 5 legal firms. It's Forest County, I think, has 1. So it's a problem. We have to continue to engage these kids at all levels.
Congratulations, first of all. Secondly, I have a house in Lawrence County for you to buy.
Okay, send it our way.
So, yeah, I do want to thank Jim publicly here for everything you've done for our community here in Mercer County. And to Mark's comments about FNB, just the history of FNB, and a lot of folks don't know this, it started here in Mercer County, actually in Greenville, downtown Greenville, First National Bank. And then you mentioned, too, about, you know, being in Hickory and now the city of Hermitage. You could be in a cemetery in a lot of different parts of this community, and you're actually in the city of Hermitage, and it's actually maybe in one of the local municipalities. So thanks so much.
Well, thanks for the tidbit on FMB there, Park. I did not know that. So, and thanks for the kind words about lawyers. We don't get that very often. I joked that I had to become a legislator because I wanted to become the most hated profession after lawyers. So, anyhow, so we're gonna move on to panel 3. Thank you 3 for testifying today and sharing and your passion. Okay, we're going to continue on to panel 3 here, and let's see here. Roskus from Buell Park. Okay. Yep. Okay, so thank you 3 for testifying here on the 3rd and final panel today. And first we got Tom Roskus with Buell Park, and then we got Mike Kotek from Mercer County Transit Authority, and Jordan Batt from Baughman Family Community Center. So thank you 3, and we look forward to your testimony today. We'll try to keep it to 5 minutes apiece here. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Roskus.
Now we're on. Thank you. Good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to speak here today. One thing to point out as I start here, if you look at the sheet for my testimony in here, it says final optimized 5-minute legislative testimony. That was for some context and maybe for some humor that will speak to the importance of recreation as infrastructure in our county and other rural places in Pennsylvania. As I put some notes together here with some of our trustees and our board members for Buell Park, what do we talk about? What's important? What's impactful? I had tons of notes written down, and so I take a picture of these, and I'm in a hurry because I need to drive 45 minutes to take my son to an AAU basketball practice, and I had to drive another hour with my wife who's going to take my other son to a travel baseball tournament, both of which are not in our area. So I take this picture on my notes, I pump it into ChatGPT, so data centers, they work, and it pops out this final optimized speech. And in this speech, I think that the key is infrastructure being considered recreation. And so my background, I'm the executive director for Buell Park in Hermitage, Pennsylvania. It's a nonprofit park opened to the public, but operated privately. My experience as a PGA professional, I traveled the country and parts of the world putting on golf trick shot shows and competing in long drive. I had a successful career in technology sales with Xerox, and then led a local rural surgical hospital, Edgewood Surgical Hospital out in Reynolds, Pennsylvania. With my experiences at Buell Park and what I see from a recreational perspective and the importance of parks is all of our business leaders that are here in the room today are offloaded. We offload the responsibility from the local governments by having the private park. And our businesses recognize the importance of that, and they support us in order to have best quality of life that they can for their folks. So when we talk about community infrastructure, we often think about roads, bridges, and utilities. But one of the most important investments we can make in our communities is recreation infrastructure. The parks and public spaces that support the health, quality of life, and economic vitality of the people we serve. This morning, I'd like to highlight 3 things: the role Buell Park plays in our region, the impact recreation has on community development, and why continued investment in parks and recreation matters. So what is recreation? When I was growing up, it's what my dad said, go out and play. Now we have to create these places for kids these days to go and play. Although Buell Park is privately operated, it is open to the public and serves thousands of residents each year. Families come to the park to spend time together. Children learn and play there. Residents of all ages benefit from outdoor recreation and green space. Most importantly, we work to ensure these opportunities remain accessible and affordable so that everyone in our community can benefit. In many ways, parks, like Buell Park, function as essential community infrastructure. Just like libraries, schools, and other public assets, parks provide spaces that support health, connection, and community life. Recreation infrastructure also plays a critical role in economic development. Today, businesses and employees increasingly evaluate quality of life when deciding where to locate or to build. Communities that invest in parks and recreation are better positioned to attract employers, retain families, and compete for talent. Programs that provide funding support for parks and nonprofit organizations are essential to maintaining these assets. Like many nonprofits, Buell Park relies on partnerships and grant opportunities to maintain facilities, improve infrastructure, and expand programming. State support has played an important role in helping parks like Beal Park maintain facilities, improve infrastructure, and expand programming for the public. Those investments allow organizations like ours to continue serving residents across the Shenango Valley and ensure that recreation opportunities remain available for future generations. We are very grateful for the Commonwealth's support and continued investment in recreation and community development. The impact of Beal Park extends beyond recreation alone. The park serves as a regional draw, bringing visitors into our community. Those visitors also discover the many other businesses and assets in our region. In that way, the park supports the broader community and contributes to the vitality of the Shenango Valley. Beal Park is a privately operated park, but it functions as public recreation infrastructure for the entire Shenango Valley, thus offsetting the cost that those municipalities have to provide that same recreation. In closing, recreation should be viewed as essential community infrastructure. Our park, Beal Park, strengthens our community, supports economic development, and improves the quality of life of the residents. Continued investment in recreation infrastructure helps ensure that communities like ours remain vibrant places to live, work, and raise families. Today, sitting here, I wasn't quite sure what the message would come across as, or the purpose of being in the room. But as I listened to the first panel and the second panel, and now have an opportunity, I can see that being a part of public-private partnerships to bring recreational opportunities in Sharon, Hermitage, and the region is key to those folks coming to our area. And as I said in starting this, I was spending my time, as I was preparing for the speech, driving to other communities. I have seen in other communities where building recreation infrastructure, indoor facilities for tournaments and practices, outdoor facilities for people to enjoy, have brought folks into that community. And then we have seen the development over time around those communities. I'd like to point out two examples quickly. I spent a lot of time in Bridgeport, West Virginia. Bridgeport, West Virginia has wonderful facilities today. 15, 20 years ago, it was a coal town. I started going back there because my kids played travel sports there. They built a large indoor, outdoor recreation facility that hosts tournaments 3 states wide. That is a great example of how that infrastructure and recreation starts the economic engine. As we went back to that over time, we saw multiple restaurants, multiple big boxes show up in that area, and then folks move in and population grow. The second example I'd like to point out is in Representative Brown's area and the south side of Newcastle at Shenango School District. The plaza in that area had an old bike store that I went to 30 years ago. Nobody wanted to go to that plaza. They built that facility there. It was an indoor facility for baseball, basketball training, similar to things that we're trying to do that I'm a part of in Shenango Valley. And all of a sudden that plaza redeveloped. There's chain stores there, housing. So congratulations to that effort. And I think those two facilities are the way that the legislature can help Mercer County, parks like Beal Park, operate and offer those amenities to attract folks into our area. So Park Representative Wentley, thank you for everything that you've done in our area and supporting many programs, and thank you for the opportunity to talk today. I'll pass that on to Mike Koenig.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I actually feel very honored to address this group of the entire room, professional people. I kind of look at myself, though I'm educated, I will tell you I graduated from Indiana University of Pennsylvania, and I must mention that tomorrow the women's basketball team for Division II is playing for the national championship. And to our north, the Gannon University's men Division II are in the Final Four for the men's national championship. A lot of people ask me why I live here. Well, I chose to live in Mercer County. I grew up in Armstrong County, went to college in Indiana County, married a woman from Indiana County, and when I got my first job in a department store as a security manager, because I am a criminology major. We moved to Mercer County, and I took a job with now a non-existent department store chain as a district manager, having the Youngstown area. All the stores I had were in Youngstown, Ohio, but my wife and I chose to come here. And people say, why? Simple. Intersection of two major interstates, 79 and 80. The access to the lake, Shenango Lake, Lake Wilhelm, Pymatuming Lake, phenomenal outdoor activity. My job later, I traveled throughout the United States and Canada. I've been to every state but two, Alaska and Hawaii, and I spent a lot of time in those states because my career ended as a financial fraud examiner for a multi-international corporation called Luxottica. You would better know them as LensCrafters, Pearl Vision, Sunglass Hut, Oakley. I traveled the US and Canada for them doing financial audits. I could have moved anywhere. Another reason I was here, the airport, 15 miles away. Just drive from Sharon, Pennsylvania, over to the Youngstown Airport and fly anywhere in the United States. Not so easy to do today. I've moved here with a wife and 2 children. I feel like over the years, I moved here in the early 80s. I'm contributing to what's happening to Mercer County today. One, I'm older, and this county is aging. I think there are more people, I believe, over 68 years of age or 65 years of age. There's like 30-some% of the population. There are about the same percentage under 18. With 2 children, I contributed to what's happening in the county. One of my daughter stayed here in the area, and she's done very well. Slippery Rock graduate, couldn't get her to go to IUP. My son went to Slippery Rock also, but he moved to Allegheny County. Why? More opportunity for recreation. Number one reason. So as I got near my retirement age and wasn't traveling as much, I got involved, courtesy of Representative Wetling, with Mercer County Trails. And I had this vision. We are in a county that has an abandoned rail line that starts in Lawrence County in Newcastle, and it runs the whole way to Erie County in Girard. And over the years that I've been involved, we have developed parts of that rail bed. It's open to develop. Yet, what I feel lacks, there is not a person, either in all our counties combined or in Mercer County. I believe in the old days they called them greenways coordinators. We don't have a one element of government that specializes in recreation for our area. Mercer County Trails has an annual budget of about $12,000. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We get our money from memberships and donations and money we raise through events. That is not the way you're going to build a trail. If you pave it, it's almost $1 million a mile by the time you do the studies, the environmental impact, then you clear the land, put into drainage, go through all the hoops of environmental studies, phase 1s, phase 2s, and then you attempt to build a trail. Our goal is to build that trail from the Lawrence County line to the Crawford County line. Wouldn't it be nice if there was somebody who could say, gee, why are you stopping there? Why aren't you going to Girard? Why aren't you going down to Newcastle, and why aren't they going further? Now, I will tell you, if you look across the state line to Ohio, they don't have any problem building trails. They're working on a trail from Lake Erie the whole way down to Cincinnati. and it's probably 65, 70% complete. Pennsylvania overall is fantastic. We are one of the leading states. We have over 14,000 miles of biking, and when you throw in hiking trails, we're over 26,000 miles. In Mercer County, I estimate we have, if we're lucky, 20. We have an 11-mile trail, the John C. Oliver Trail, up at Lake Wilhelm, or Goddard State Park. And we have a 2.5-mile trail in Sharpsville, Pennsylvania, that runs along the lake there. And we have about a 2.5-mile trail in Greenville, and it runs from Main Street to Porter Road. We are ready to go from Porter Road to Jamestown, and gee, we'd be right on the edge of Pymatuning State Park. And then we would be right on the edge. In fact, we own the land from Jamestown to the Ohio line. We own that corridor, but we don't have the money, and we don't have the driving force of communities uniting. You know, we talk about the mergers. I don't know how many school districts we have in this area and how much of the administrators that we pay to administer all those. In a lot of areas, I can just go to Erie County. McDowell has over 5,000 graduates. 500 graduates. I forget the size of the school system up there. Every year, McDowell graduates around 597 people. We have schools in our county that graduate under 100. So to me, Penn Northwest is a fantastic organization. You just need an environmental wing. And the state of Pennsylvania, I know they just issued a long recreation study. The people in Mercer County, particularly, because that's where I live, need to read it. Because somebody earlier mentioned attitude. And that's what it takes. I think a lot of people here, particularly in Mercer County and Sharon, are thinking like it's the 50s. And it's not the 50s, and government doesn't operate the way it used to, and the big mills aren't here anymore. We need to look at new ways in developing recreation. Jobs, absolutely. Affordable housing, absolutely. Schools, it's a shame Penn State is looking at moving their campus. But good schools, good medicine. Recently I saw IUP is going to affiliate their medical program with the local hospital. Excellent. And what else do we need? Culture. I live here because I could drive to Pittsburgh and go to a show or a concert, or I could drive to Cleveland, 50, 60 miles either way. Why can't we have that here? It takes entrepreneurs like Mr. Landino and others, Mr. George from the Cone Company, of bringing things together. And that's what Penn Northwest has started. And I believe in the recreation end, we just need to develop it a little more. I know Tom and I years ago drove down into West Virginia looking at a pump track, and he was able to convince the board at Beal Park to build one of the first in Western Pennsylvania. And shortly after that, we raised money to build a bicycle playground. I believe it's only the third or fourth one in Pennsylvania when it was built. It's in downtown Sharon. We need more efforts where recreation becomes an integral part of keeping. I would love it if my son was still in Mercer County. Not happening, probably never will. But maybe another family, we can find ways to keep their children here. And recreation is one of the things that will do it.
I think I'm cutting into lunch, so I'll make it quick, don't worry. Excuse me. No, good morning, policy committee members. Super thankful for your time today. Thanks to everybody, Park, for putting all this on. Absolutely awesome. It is really an honor, like everyone else has said, to be here. So my name is Jordan Batt, and I'd just like to start. I'm from Greenville, Pennsylvania, work in Greenville, so I was one of the kids in high school that everyone was looking to get out, and I, for some reason, wanted to stay. I love the area and love it here. So kind of a cool perspective I have. I serve as the director, like I mentioned, of the Baughman Family Community Center, but we also operate in partnership with the Buell Club in Sharon, PA. So I'm also heavily involved in the things going on in northern and southern Mercer County, which I think, again, gives me a little bit of a unique perspective today. Just a little background. The Buell Club and Baughman Center are nonprofit organizations dedicated to strengthening communities through youth development, healthy living, social interactions, those kind of things. We serve individuals of all ages with educational opportunities, community outreach, and health and fitness programs. So you think of your YMCAs or your JCCs, same kind of mission, same kind of community impact we strive to have. If you go back 100 years, 1903, the Buell Club started. What started as a male-only organization has turned into a cornerstone of Sharon. Generations of families have went through there. I know there would be people in here who would have fond memories of the Buell Club. And again, just shows, the pride that they take in their community and bringing people in, having them, better themselves mentally or physically. So if we move north now to Greenville, northern Mercer County, if you would have drove down Columbia Avenue, which is a pretty predominant road right through the middle of town, you'd see the middle school run down, closed, just kind of sitting there. An eyesore of kind of a wilting town that could use some kind of revitalization. So you fast forward to today, that same middle school is the Baughman Family Community Center, a huge, huge community hub, people in and out of the doors for all different reasons, and has just showed that people in the community are looking to get out, looking to get interactive, and something like that kind of just pulls them right out. So together, both of these facilities impact thousands of individuals in the Mercer County area. The need for centers is undeniable. We have hundreds of people through our door for our Silver Sneakers programs. We have youth for our after-school programs, basketball camps, arts and crafts, you name it. We have kids and families coming through the door to better themselves. And not to mention our child development centers we have too, have waiting lists for all the different ages from infants to pre-K. So it just shows the need that a community center has. I want to give one quick example of a community center and kind of what it can do for a community. So we have this program we do at the Baughman Center called the Back to School Bash. Think of a carnival before school starts for kids. Through partnerships with organizations, churches, and different things like that, we were able to fill 500 backpacks with school supplies over the last 2 summers for kids and give out 200 free haircuts. So we recruit all the local barbers and hairdressers to come into the gym. And like I said, they just, cutting hair for 3 hours. We have a party going on. It's a really great time. I don't say this for a pat on the back. I say it for those ideas are out there in all these other communities, and you just need a place like the Baughman Center or the Buell Club to turn those good ideas into action and to initiate those and to be the host site and things like that. So just a little bit of the ways community centers impact this area, and again, all over the state, really. These small community centers are vital. So now I'll focus a little bit on the importance of state funding and the role that plays and how that can help so much. So, just the Buell Club, for example, got an RACP grant, and it's $1 million to improve accessibility to their facility. So, the Buell Club parking lot used to, I swear, go to slope about downhill, like you had to kind of brace yourself to get into the building. So it just gives people now, the confidence to go and know the parking lot's great, right? There's railings there, and probably the biggest asset was an elevator was added. So the pool at the Buell Club is on the 2nd floor. So that grant right there gave, community members that, probably were a little apprehensive on coming into the center. They can come right in, take the pool and aqua classes and things like that, and just give them, more of a reason to get out of the house and social interaction. Similarly, the Baughman Center, with support of Representative Michelle Brooks, received a $100,000 grant that kind of jump-started our education aspect of it there. So again, that was something that was really needed in the community, and that was kind of a big shot in the arm to help us. So a huge thank you. Again, state funding goes a long way. Looking ahead, there's more infrastructure needs. Just for example, the Baughman Center has a boiler that is just completely outdated. So little things like that come up. We want things to be efficient with kids in the building. We want it to be safe. And things like that pop up, just a boiler is just not in the budget. So again, that's where state funding can come into, a big assistance for us. And, really to kind of just to wrap things up, we try to do everything we can to keep things affordable, right? We're in this town, we're in this community. We know our demographic, and we want to make sure anyone who comes to these centers can come in there and can enjoy themselves. So continued support with our community partners, goes a long way, but there's also going to be some need for state funding, especially with a small community center like this. So Again, I'm not just advocating for even the Buell or the Baughman Center, but as a whole, if, a small town community center, something comes across your desk, or if you hear something, put some thought into it, which I know you all will, but there's a lot of things behind the scenes that community centers do that maybe, on paper, it doesn't jump right out at you. So, again, thank you so much for your time. Happy to answer any questions, but I really appreciate you guys being here.
We'll start with Representative Wentling.
Yes, Jordan, I just want to publicly thank you for all your work there at the Baughman Center. And we have a family membership there, and we also have the ability to go to Buell too with that. And I did want to thank Mark Longjetti, who's in the room here, for his support of the improvements at the Buell Center, but also at the Baughman Center too. He had the Borough of Greenville, and it was really good of him to do. And also, I want to talk to Mike here briefly and just make a couple comments and just thank you for your leadership, not just with the Mercer County Trails Association, but your daughter and son-in-law, for those people that don't know, created the Shenango River Watchers, and what was done with the River Watchers in regards to the water trail, from Jamestown, down into the Shenango Valley, and how that really works well with the terrestrial trails that we're working on over the years. I also want to mention about we know working with the piece of property we worked to obtain over the years, going from Jamestown area over to the Ohio line, that they're very close to actually closing that gap and having a complete trail from Ashtabula. They also have something called Metro Parks in Ohio, Ashtabula Metro Parks, and Charlie Cooley and their leadership over the years, and how they have a county-based Metro Park system that supports the trails and works on those every single day. So that's part of it too, is they have a kind of leg up on that with the way it's set up over there. I also mentioned this too, I don't know if I've ever publicly stated this, but in preparation for our trail from the Newcastle area to Girard that Jake now has. I used to have an office in Girard, but Jake now has that area in western Erie County. I built a tunnel under I-90 for you, working with PennDOT when they redid 90 for our trail. So we have a trail, we have a tunnel under 90, waiting for the trail to come up through. So I just want to let you know about that too. And we've done improvements on that trail corridor, working with Dan Bickle and Palmetinian State Park. Through the Lionsville area, and also a piece coming from Lionsville heading towards Conneaut Lake. I've worked with Calvin Ernst to extend the Ernst Trail up, and the goal is to connect from the Ernst Trail there, and now that we're in Conneaut Lake, over to Lionsville. So, and finally, Tom, thank you so much for your leadership. We're really looking forward to seeing the park and go see Dum Dums today. I know that you got some state money for Dum Dums, and also it was really wonderful working with you in a public-private partnership in regards to the bike share program, which I'm sure you might want to talk about a little bit at lunchtime. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Representative Wentling, and I can assure you that as a fellow cycling caucus club or member, that Park has invited me out here numerous times to come ride bikes with him. So, maybe one of these days I'll take him up on that. We gotta stay on the road for me on my bike. So anyhow, but I want to thank our testifiers for taking the time to share their insights with the committee today. If we want rural Pennsylvania to thrive, we need policies to make it easier to grow business, possible to build and afford a home, and worthwhile for families to stay and invest in their communities. And it's clear that the solutions are within reach if we're willing to align our policies with the realities communities are facing on the ground. I truly appreciate everyone who contributed to today's conversation, and we look forward to continuing this work. For those in attendance, thank you for joining us today, and I also want to thank our great staff who play an integral role in making these hearings possible. Thank you guys. They travel all over the state with us, so. So you can join the policy committee on Monday morning for a hearing on making childcare more affordable. Representative Rowe will be back for that one. But until then, this committee is adjourned.